Welcome to the Sisters in Crime Writers Podcast. Everyone has a unique writing journey, so join us for conversations about those journeys from the writers themselves. This is Julie Henriques, the Executive Director of Sisters in Crime, and I am delighted to welcome Susan Santangelo to the podcast this week. Susan is the author of the best-selling Baby Boomer mystery series. The humorous cozies follow the adventures of a typical boomer couple, Carol and Jim Andrews, as they navigate life's rocky road in their post-50 years and beyond. In addition to being a proud member of Sisters in Crime, Susan is also a member of International Thriller Writers and the Cape Cod Writers Center. She divides her time between Clearwater, Florida, and Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and shares her life with her husband, Joe, who is not Jim, a dog lover in all her life. Her two English Cocker Spaniels, Boomer and Lilly, are featured on the book's covers. A two-time breast cancer survivor, she credits early detection through mammograms to saving her life twice. Susan, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, Julie, I'm so glad to be here. Hello, hello.
Hello. I'm going to start how I always start this conversation. When did you say to yourself, I want to write a book?
I probably started that idea in high school, but I always wanted to write ever since I was a little girl. I started writing stories, making up things, possibly lying, I don't know, but I was making up stories. And I remember a neighbor said to me, you write so nice, you're going to be a writer someday. And it sort of stuck with me because she was my first fan, I think, the woman who lived next door who encouraged me to keep writing.
Oh, that's awesome. Encouragement like that is so important throughout a writer's career, right?
Absolutely.
So talk to me about when, you sort of buckled down and said, I'm going to write a book. Was that, a lifelong pursuit, or was there a point in your life when you just said, okay, let's do this?
Well, actually, there was a point in time when I just decided I had to do it. And I had a story to tell, and I sort of thought that the story I had to tell was something that a lot of women my age, which is over 50, 60, et cetera, could identify with. My husband of many years, long-suffering husband, was retiring. And I decided that I was going to write a book called Retirement Can Be Murder. And I came up with the title. I wasn't going to kill the husband. So many people have asked me that question. But I decided, your life changes when you get to that point. If I was doing a lot of freelance work at home and he was going to an office every day, and I realized like a thud that all of a sudden he was going to be in the house all the time. And this was going to be a seismic shift in our relationship. Wow. And now this was about 15 years ago. That's when I had the idea for the first book. Well, actually, I thought it was the only book. I never thought it was going to be a series. So I had this great idea that my husband, who was also a writer, and I could co-write the book. And what we would be doing would be telling the story of a typical boomer couple, one chapter from the wife's point of view and the other chapter from the man's point of view. So, because that's what happens. We have to learn to communicate with each other. So I gave my husband the idea, and he looked at me like I was crazy. And I thought, well, okay. But I said, he said, I've never read a mystery. And this is how stupid I was. I said, well, how difficult can you be? You have a few characters. You have a little bit of a plot. You kill somebody off, and then somebody figures out who the murderer is. Does that sound hard to you? And he looked at me and he said, I don't think it's quite that simple. And I said, well, we'll learn as we go along, okay? So I wrote the first chapter of Retirement Can Be Murder. And oh, my God, I thought it was brilliant. All my girlfriends that looked at it thought it was just brilliant. You've captured the mood of a poor wife. And I said to my husband, now you have to write the second chapter where you're resigning after many, many years, retiring. And so you take care of that. So he said, okay, I'm on it. So I wrote chapter 3, where I was telling a little bit more about the backstory of the entire relationship. And I said to him, now, how are you doing with your chapter? And he said, oh, I'm doing fine. I need more time. Well, we went back and forth like this. And finally, I think I was on chapter 5 or 7. And I said, I really like to read what you've written. And he looked at me and he said, I don't really think this is my thing. So I really haven't done anything. Well, truly, I was not really surprised because my husband was a newsman for many, many years. And he wrote press releases and he covered all kinds of important things. And he really was a newspaper reporter. And there's a whole different genre to newspapers than there is to writing a book. So I think probably in the back of my mind, I always thought I was going to do it by myself. But I wasn't prepared to have him throw in the towel quite that quickly. So I went back and I started the whole book again. And I think that it really turned out pretty good. As I said, we did the best we could. My husband read it. Oh, I forgot. This is the most important thing that he said to me that day. He said, well, you write the book and I'll critique it. And I looked at him and I said, we've been married for almost 50 years. I think I've had about enough critiquing that I'm really ready for it. No more critiquing. So I almost didn't show him the first draft because I did not want any more criticism. But he actually laughed. He thought it was funny. So that's how the whole series began. That's how book 1 began. And we put it on Amazon, and all of a sudden it went to number 1. I could not believe it. It went to number 1. I started getting mail, emails, texts from women not just all over the country, but all over the world, saying that I had tapped something that nobody was talking about. And bravo to you. And now that he's retired, what happens next? And I thought, next? Next? Face me. I'm telling you, this was not part of the plan. I was writing, I should tell you, on good old Cape Cod at the time. And the Cape Cod Times did a big feature story on me. And they had a magazine that they used to publish once a month. And they put me on the cover of the magazine. This is a free thing. They don't publish it anymore. It was in all the grocery stores, all the CVS's. I would walk into a place and somebody would say, who is that? She looks so familiar, but I don't think I know her. And people started to follow me around the grocery store. And I thought, this is really strange. But anyway, so I had to write a second book. And I thought, well, what do we do now?
I want to kind of go back to the writing the book and because that's a craft and learning how to write a book and mystery, had you taken classes? Had you been writing, fiction or tell me about the journey up until that first book, which was, it did tap into something. So you have tremendous indie success, but talk to me about how you learned the craft of writing.
Well, I have, like a lot of mystery writers, I had read mysteries all my life. Yeah. Of course, I grew up with Nancy Drew, the old story there. I loved Agatha Christie. I loved all the twisty plots. And I found myself a real fan of what you know very well, a cozy mystery. Mm-hmm. And so I think I took a couple of mystery stories and I outlined them as far as how the plot opened, and then you're rising up to the middle where there's a body of some kind, or some people put it right in the beginning of the book and then try to solve the mystery, and then it goes down again. I am definitely not a plotter. I am definitely a pantser, but I think the arc of the story was something that I began to reread books that I could identify with the arc to understand the craft of when you put this in. And I realized it's a very personal, a writer makes the decision as the book unfolds, in my mind anyway. And so I practiced first with a couple of really short stories. And then I learned a pace. Let's put it that way. I learned a pace. I set my own pace. And I came up with a system where I would begin the book with a crisis. And then I would go back and tell the story, how the crisis started. And so that sort of became my trademark in a way. The first chapter of the first book, which was really an introduction, was the wife receiving a call from her husband, frantic, that he had just found the dead body of his retirement coach dead on the floor. And so right away, a reader would know there's a dead body. And then I went back and told the story of how and why, and then wrapped it up at the very end. So that was the way I sort of practiced with that, and it worked out really well. So,
Yeah.
But really, my teachers were the best ones around, absolutely, positively, living and deceased. And I did it until I got it right. I was satisfied with the way it arced, because the arc of the story is very, very, very important. And I was happy with the way that it came out at the end, because it really came back with a bang at the end. And of course, the end of the book was the fact that the husband had a clue that he had never thought to share with his wife before. He shared it with his wife, and all of a sudden, she figured out what happened. But the communication was not happening through most of the book. And at the very, very end, he just said something offhand to her, and she went, "Oh my God, oh my God." And she was able to put the whole thing together. So I guess the first book was really about communication in a way. But it was the arc of the story and the fact that people don't talk to each other a lot. So that was a learning curve for me. I don't know if any other writer writes that way, but it worked for me.
Well, I want to come back to a couple of things you said, because I think they're so important. Reading a lot and then thinking about how they did it is such a great tool for writers to use. You can read for enjoyment, and then you go back and say, okay, how did they do that? Because,
Right, exactly.
what does that look like? And then when you talked about pace, this is part of story structure, is how do you keep the story going and the tension building? And again, that's a craft thing that takes a while to figure out, but that's what you would already set yourself up to. I understand that this is so important when I'm writing this book.
Yeah. Yep. I also think that in a way, even though I was writing the book in the first person, and I think that I was actually putting a lot of my own life into the character of Carol Andrews with the wife in the story. And so it was not difficult for me to write that way, because I was basically living the plot, except for the dead body, of course. So that made it easier for me, I think, to write the arc, because I could identify with Carol in so many ways. So I think that helped me too. I don't know if I could actually write a book in the third person, to tell you the truth, because Carol talks all the time. And it's always, of course, it's her. But I think I did such an interesting job with it that people around Cape Cod began to call me Carol, which is true, Julie, by the way. I haven't introduced you people in a grocery store. It's Carol. And, that's a curse, too. That gets to be a little bit silly after a while. But I think because I was writing my own life in a lot of ways, I was able to pull it off.
Well, and you tapped into a couple of other things. One is theme, like the theme of that book being communication is such an important thing to understand. And again, this comes from lots of reading and thinking about things, but that ties the whole story together to be with that theme. But your premise, you did hit on something that a lot of people can relate to, which is life is gonna change right now, and let's see what happens here.
Yeah, I really didn't expect to have tapped on so many people's lives, but it's true. And I've also gone to like libraries, and I've had people walk up to me and say, "When did you meet my husband?" This is true. And I thought, oh my! And for a moment, I thought, well, did I go to school with this person? I thought. And then I began to realize, no, they're identifying with the character. And I thought that was kind of fun in a way.
And the circumstance, because it is. I mean, when my dad retired, my mother started to volunteer much more outside the home.
Yes.
Figure some stuff out. So you didn't expect that first book to be the hit that it was, and
No,
when was that published?
the first one came out 15 years ago. So
Okay,
what is that? 20?
2011.
I can't do the math.
Yeah,
Thank you.
2011.
Good. Yeah,
So you tried to go the traditional route with it, and get it published,
I
or
did.
yeah,
I did. I did indeed. I did. I had so many agents tell me the book was so funny. They just laughed so much, but they didn't think there was an audience for it.
hmm.
And I thought, well, that's interesting. And how old are you, dear? Really, I thought this is just people are living this every single day.
Yeah.
I cannot believe that it. And so I really actually decided it was never going to be published. And I thought, well, if it's not published, at least I enjoyed the journey of writing the very first book, writing my first and probably only book. And I'll tell you a really true story, which is how the whole thing happened to be published. I went to a talk on writing and books, mysteries today, at one of our local libraries here on Cape Cod. And the speaker was the books editor of the then Cape Cod Times. And she was talking all about how in this difficult market, it is really impossible to get a book published if you are an unknown person. The only way that a publisher is going to pick you up is if you are a celebrity, you already have a following of some kind. And she said, I think that the indie publishing part is going to just blossom because so many people have stories to tell. So if there's anybody sitting in the audience today who is thinking of writing a book or has written a book that they cannot sell, my suggestion is do it yourself.
Wow.
Honest to God, it was like lightning that struck me. It was just unbelievable. And so that was what gave me the very first idea for doing it ourselves. And I have to tell you, the rejection letters that I got were so beautifully written. I could have wallpapered with the many of them that I got. I have no idea how many, but they were all loved the book, made them laugh so much, but they didn't think anybody would buy it. So I thought, well, okay. So we did it. We did it ourselves, literally.
Well, just as an aside, it's an amazing difference in 15 years and maybe it's because, boomers are getting older and retiring and everything else. But I think that there feels like older protagonists are actually, much more part of what books are. Still not to the degree that perhaps they should be, but I wonder if you'd get that same conversation, same now.
I don't know. Well, I still am not famous. I'm still not a celebrity. So I don't know. I don't know. But it is interesting. That's a really important point. There are lots of books being written today, particularly cozy mysteries, about an older woman. Frequently, it's a woman who is alone for some reason or other. I don't think there have been too many books written about the husband-wife relationship. Of course, Leslie Meyer does a wonderful job with her cozy mysteries, and she's been doing it for years. But the husband is kind of a secondary character in that book, whereas in my book, the husband is very much a central character, even if he's disagreeing with Carol or trying to rein her in or whatever. But I'm happy to see that the older protagonists are getting a lot of attention these days. That makes me feel good. They were long overdue, I think, except for, of course, Miss Marple. Let's not forget her.
Yeah, please, let's never forget Miss Marple. So I want to talk about writing, and then we're going to talk about publishing. But let's, so you've got a hit on your hands. You've got readers who want the second book. Talk to me,
right?
As you've built the world you've done, but sometimes that second book can be, well, I spent all the energy on the first book. I don't know what I'm going to do. Talk to me about how you approach the second book and the series.
Well, I'll tell you, I began to place myself more and more in Carol Andrews' lap, or she in mine. I'm not sure which, but I decided, okay, if there's been a cosmic shift and the husband is now home. What is the next thing now that the couple would probably be thinking about? And what came to mind immediately was moving, downsizing. We get so many people who come to Cape Cod, as you know, as a retirement place.
Yeah.
And that is an interesting thing. If the kids have left the house now and they're all out on their own, and you're in a large house that takes a lot of care, frequently people want to retire to a warmer climate or to a condo that has no steps, something like that. So I thought, well, this to me would be the next conversation, logically, that Carol and Jim would have about moving. And in fact, at the end of the second book, I actually put a moving quiz for readers to answer the questions if you're thinking about moving. And I sort of made them up with a focus group of women my own age.
Mm-hmm.
But what to think about when you're downsizing. There are lots of things to be considered, and you may end up staying in your own home, but, you need to think about these things in advance. And yes. I found moving companies who specialized in helping older clients, that kind of thing. Of course, not nearly as many as there are today. But to me, that was the logical next thing for this couple to have to decide whether they're going to sell their house or not, and then to go through a housing search with them, which comes to an abrupt halt when they actually do sell their house, but then it doesn't exactly work out the way that they planned. So that was how I came up with the second book, and I wrote that much faster than I wrote the first book, I think, because I was really into it now. Carol was really in my head, and I thought, well, this makes so much sense. And I talked to a lot of people who had been through this, and what they decided to do and how they decided to do it. So they sort of all became parts of my little head, and that's how the second book came to be. And now I had an audience. I had people who were listening and waiting to hear what happens next. So that's the way the whole book started. Book 2 started.
It's interesting because cozies are heightened reality, and because we don't run into dead bodies in our lives. But at the same time, you're hitting on themes that are very relatable to people. At a point in their lives, or the children of parents who are downsizing, or incredibly relatable themes.
Yes, and I think that's why the books have become so popular, because I am really talking a lot about my own life in a lot of ways, except for the dead body, of course. But it's. I remember with the first book doing some book signings outdoors at various places on Cape Cod, and one woman picked up the book that said "Retirement Can Be Murder," and she looked at me and she said, "Does she kill him?" And I looked at her and I said, "No," and she said, "Well, then I'm not buying it," and she walked away.
Wow.
So, you never know. But anyway, so yeah, moving is an important thing to think about when you reach a certain age, I think. And a lot of other people do too.
Yes, absolutely. So let's talk about the business side of this, because you're queried a lot of people, and then you decided you're going to go indie after going to that talk. Which was, at least, I'm very happy to hear that the person talking about the industry at that moment was so supportive and so encouraging to think about indie publishing, because it would have been terrible if all she did was shut down people's dreams and say, yeah, there's no market, you're never going to get published.
You remember back in those days, indie publishing was not looked upon favorably.
No, it was not.
There were lots of companies, remember, on the net, the internet, that were scams, and you needed to give them $500, and then, we'll give you 5 copies of your book, and Yes. And so to be an indie publisher and author was not looked upon favorably by the major publishing community. And so that was a stigma that I had sort of stuck in my head. And then when we started to try to do it ourselves, I learned an awful lot about the industry. Which has changed radically today, of course, indie publishing.
And changes all the time.
Yes. Well, no, I'd just like to explain how the first book was published.
Yes,
Would you
please
be
do.
interested in that? Because my husband has been writing for a magazine on Cape Cod, and they had a publisher and a whole system set up for publishing the magazine. So I give him credit for this. He gave me the idea of approaching that company to see if they would be interested in publishing a mystery book. They had never, ever thought about doing a book, designing it the whole bit, but they decided that they would like to take a chance. So it was because of this company. I can't even name it now because it's out of business. But we learned together, the company, the publishing company, and myself, and then they found a printer to print the book. So that's the way the whole book started. And we were able to do the first 4 books like that through this other company. And the photograph for book 1, for the cover, is a photograph actually that was taken on a friend's porch on New Year's Day on Cape Cod after a snowstorm. And the idea was that the dog was supposed to be sitting on the chair. And we brought one of our dogs with us, and the dog refused to sit. So we ended up putting Lucy on the back of the cover, which is how the whole thing about dogs on the back of the covers came to be, because we got tired of holding her down to make her sit. And so she became sort of the first mascot, the first dog. But it really became where I sat with this company day after day working on this book. They became such an incredible collaborator with me. And that's, so the book was really a joint effort, but it was done by people that I knew. It was not done by a company that you would find on the internet. And I think that made the difference. Does that make sense to you? I hope it does.
No, it does make sense. So, Susan, did they help with the, editing and the copy editing and all that? Was that part of the process with them of really taking it from your draft to a finished? Yes.
Line by line by line, they did. We would sit line by line by line and go through it. And then we would go through it again. And again, they had experience with small, magazine articles, but not with a full-length novel. But we all learned together, and I could not have done it without them, to tell you the truth. I could not have done it without them. And we all learned together. So it was really a very, very positive experience for me.
Well, and it also sounds as though once it got time to release, talk to me about that part, about the, we're going to, the first book's published, you've got some copies, probably a few boxes in your garage, whatever, but talk to me about that, how you got it out into the world, because it's not, a lot of people could have gone through the same process and it wouldn't have hit the same way. So talk to me about the marketing of it.
Well, the marketing of it, the first book was only published in traditional format for a while, because the Kindle versions were just beginning, I think, to be prominent. And, of course, that exploded eventually. So I was actually driving around Cape Cod with the books in the trunk of my car, to tell you the truth. And I would go into a bookstore, and we have many independent bookstores here, most of which have now folded, which is very, very sad. But and I would show them the book. And they'd say, "Oh yeah, we'll do that." And then they'd have me come and do an author talk. And that's how the whole thing began. And of course, the Cape Cod Times was tremendously supportive, and they would always put something in the paper when I was going to be someplace. So it was in a very small market. It was on Cape Cod. When we decided to put it onto Kindle, and I think that was maybe a year after it first came out now. And again, this publishing company had never done anything on ebooks before. So we learned all of that craft together. But it was when it went on Kindle for the first time that's when the book really exploded, because that's when people began to hear about retirement, and retirement can be murder, all because there were other instruments besides the trunk of my car to get the word out. And that's when the book really started to take off.
And, the trunk of your car is, it may feel like a cliche, but every writer has to have books in their car at all times because you never know if they run out or if you're at an event or if somebody says something.
Exactly.
And you gotta,
Exactly.
it's one-on-one. People, it's like recommendations or anything else. It's hand selling one by one to build up the buzz.
Exactly. And we would not print a huge amount at the time because we had to pay for the printing. But the printer thought he'd never done a book before either. So he was having a great time. In fact, he was the one that decided I should have bookmarks for the book. I had never thought about that. So he designed the bookmarks for the first book himself, and he used the scrap paper from the cover art to print them. And so it didn't cost us anything. But he just thought this whole thing was a riot.
Oh, I love that. And so, how many books in the series now?
Book 12 just came out today. Book 12.
Wow.
I'm amazed.
I mean, that's so, 15 years, that's almost a book a year. I mean, that's a pretty strong pace there.
Well, I seem to have more and more to say. And people give me ideas now, too, about things that they think would be funny. Or, my mother is going through this, or my daughter is going through this, and blah, 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 blah. And so I don't lack for ideas now. I lack for time to write them because obviously I'm not getting any younger. And people don't understand how long it takes to write something that possibly you could read in a day. And that's the question that I have struggled with for years. So I don't crank them out as fast as I used to. I have already started book 13, however, so I am still keeping going, but it's not a quick process. And then you have all the editing, as you know very well, that has to happen before the book can even begin to be thought of as a real book.
I just for folks to know, your newest book is Pickleball Can Be Murder. Every Wife Has a Story, and I love because the Every Wife Has a Story, but the Pickleball Can Be Murder feels very of the moment, particularly Cape Cod.
Yes, and by the way, I do not play pickleball. I have never played pickleball. I will never play pickleball. I just want to get that out there.
So. You're writing these books, you're doing this stuff, at any point during this process, have you ever thought, has somebody else besides Carol sat on your lap and said, let me tell you a story? Or are you just entrenched in her world and that's the series you're going to keep talking?
Well, I think that is the series that I'm going to keep going as long as I can. However, a very annoying, I have a lot of annoying characters, not a lot of annoying, but I have several annoying characters. But then I had a ghost pop into one of them. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And at this point, I had a publisher, by the way. A publisher picked up the series for, 8 books. They thought it was really interesting because Carol was the only one who could see this ghost. And this ghost really took over the book in a lot of ways. And then I thought, well, wouldn't it be interesting to write a story from the point of view of a ghost? And I had actually had the ghost answering ads in the Ghost Gazette, where she would apply for a job as a sleuth or something. And this was part of the plot of, Masquerades Can Be Murder. I get forgetful. And the publisher thought that was such a great idea. She said, well, why don't you spin off a series with the ghost? And I thought, oh, no, that's too hard. I don't want to do that. I just want to have Carol. So the ghost is not in the current book. But it's an interesting concept. But I'm not going to write it. Not me. Carol and I are married now. We're totally married now. We just are totally each other. So I'm not going to have anybody else interfere in our romance. No.
And so talk to me about that publishing journey. So you're indie publishing with a printer. I mean, that's a fascinating story too. And that's working with a magazine and then working with trying to get this done. I mean, that's you really were pioneering how you were going to do this. And then you kept doing it that way for a while. Then a publisher came, and are you back to publishing them yourself now?
Well, I'll just give you just a brief capsule of what happened. I was picked up by Suspense magazine to become a reviewer for the magazine. And that, I think, was when I was writing the third book. And then they decided to branch out into publishing books. And that's when I was their first published author. And that was with, I think it was Funerals Can Be Murder. And so I really became a reviewer before I became picked up by the publisher. And so I now, unfortunately, Suspense has closed. It's like a lot of small houses. The money is just not there to keep going. Yeah. And so I had Pickleball written and partially edited. And I got a very sad text from the publisher saying, "We're really sorry. We love your writing, but, we're not going to be publishing any more books." And it was like a stab through the heart. Yeah. This was last fall. I got this. And I had nowhere to go. I just thought, well, what am I going to do? I did not want to go back through the whole thing of trying to find an agent. You know, Julie, better than almost anybody, how the smaller houses have either closed or merged with larger houses. Kensington is one of my favorite publishers, but it would be impossible to get a publisher as large as that to look at something at that stage, I think. And it would have taken a year for them to actually buy the book. And you know the process that we have to go through when you sign a contract, and then you go through all of the hoops and stuff. And I also realized that I would not have the control over the cover of the book, which I know you also believe in this, is so important to sell the book. The cover art has to say, "Hello, don't you want to know more about this book? This is a really good book," or something like that. The colors, whatever, attracts the eye first, particularly on Kindle when you have an instantaneous either positive or negative reaction to the book. And so I thought, well, what am I going to do? I have no idea. And again, my fairy godmother, actually, who is not my fairy godmother really, but my former babysitter. Can I tell this story? It's really almost silly, but she actually worked for Educational Testing Services in Princeton, New Jersey, and she was a book editor. I had no idea. We reconnected again last fall. After probably 20 years, she popped back into my life. And the next thing I knew, I had an editor. And then through a lot of local contacts on Cape Cod, I was introduced to a wonderful person in California who took up the entire publishing mantle and did everything for me for a very, very, very reasonable price. And she's wonderful to work with. And my cover artist did the cover. And we had somebody in that this woman in California knew did all of the production, and the book is coming out today. It's like a miracle to me. It's like an absolute miracle to me. My life has come full circle in a whole different way that I never expected it to.
Well, and that's a wonderful story, just, in so many levels, because indie publishing or small press or whatever you're doing, but to get it to go out isn't just you write a good book. It's the editing and the copy editing and the cover. I mean, there's so much to it. And having a team that's going to help you through that is such a gift.
It was a gift. It was a gift. It really was a gift. There's a very tight writing community on Cape Cod. Of course, the Cape Cod Writers Center has a lot to do with that kind of thing. But I had learned and met so many wonderful writers on the Cape. We would do some things for Sisters in Crime, of course, but also for the Writers Center on panels, et cetera, and talk about writing and talking about how we write our books and all that stuff. So I knew a lot of people, and some people had been through a similar experience from me. And so I reached out. And I got an answer from a friend of mine who lives about 2 towns away from me. And he had done something similar to what I was thinking of doing. And he already had a lot of the connections. And it was like a gift. Yeah. So he's the one that put me in touch with this woman in California. And it was like a miracle. I had the babysitter and the woman in California. So that it's like a birthday gift to me to have this book out today, because I never thought it would happen. I never thought it would happen. So there's a lot of excitement in indie publishing today.
Yes.
And it's respected today. Don't you think, Julie, a lot more than it used to be?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there are incredibly well-published authors who choose the indie route because it's also financially, they get a bigger percentage, and there's a lot of reasons to go indie. And but you're also laying it out. Like, if you decide to do this, here's the stuff you have to worry about. So you either have to do it or you have to hire people. It's not, there's not a magic fairy who comes in and waves a wand. But with traditional publishing, there's not, it's also got its own system. So I think indie publishing is really interesting right now.
And you have more control over it. You truly have more control over it too. I think if it happened this way in the beginning, I wouldn't have appreciated it nearly as much as I do now. And the writing community is so supportive of each other, I have found.
Yes.
And I am now sharing what I have learned with a lot of people who are sort of stumped at this point in time. I can't guarantee that it will go as smoothly as I was fortunate to have it go, but I also had a name of sorts too, so people knew that they were dealing with somebody that was a legitimate author. But my tagline is "Every wife has a story."
Yes,
and I really think that every person has a story.
Yeah.
With everybody writing their family history today, everybody going back to trace their roots, et cetera, we all have stories to tell. Everybody's story is important. And whether it gets published or not, I just think that there's a wealth of people who are writing in diaries. And it's exciting to me that there's such a burst of people who are looking more into their lives and into their grandmother's lives, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody has something to say. So whether it should be published or not, that I can't say.
Yes, and I love that distinction. It's right. You're like, everyone should write their story if they feel compelled to write it. Publishing is you're getting on another train track, but writing,
Absolutely.
you control the writing. So do it. I mean, don't let anything get in your way, because this is your journey, and you have to care about your writing more than anyone else, because no one else is going to care about it as much as you do.
Very true. Very true. Yep. And if you write something that then you can have your family share in, that's a gift also. And maybe for your grandchildren someday, whatever. But I think the important thing is that everybody's got a story. We all got here for some reason. Yeah. How did it happen? How did your parents meet, et cetera, et cetera? The stories are fascinating. Sometimes, as you know, truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
And we've all got stories to tell. I just choose mine to do fiction, but
Yeah.
But again, let me just reiterate, I do not play pickleball. I do not.
So I love that you're sharing your journey, because it's a roller coaster ride, Susan. I mean, you're talking about, you think it's going to go this way, and then it goes this way, and then this happens, and then that text last year of publishers going out of business, that's a gut punch that's hard to explain to folks, because you're an orphan. I mean, it's who's going to take this up, and yet pickleball is out in the world.
That's right. It was a rocky road, but it is out, and hopefully people will laugh. I cried a lot over this book because I thought it was never going to be born. So it was born today.
Yes.
So I'm excited about that. I'm really excited about that. So hopefully people will get a kick out of it. I hope so. I hope so. But even so, I'm so proud that we were able to do it.
Yes.
It was really it really was a miracle in a lot of ways.
And the lesson there is enjoy every step of the journey, because, the fact that there's a book called, your pickleball book is out there and there's a cover and it's on Amazon, just enjoying that moment. If nobody else if nobody buys it, you still have
Right.
that moment, and you have to celebrate that moment.
Absolutely. It's also on Barnes & Noble, by the way, for the first time, which I was excited about too. So people can order it through barnesandnoble.com too, which is kind of cool.
And do you have your whole backlist? Do you own your backlist now?
Oh, well, no, I have the first 4 books I own, and the first 2 are now an audiobook, and the Pickleball is being put into an audiobook right now. I have to get my backlist back. That's the next thing on my agenda. And hopefully I will be able to, it will not be a problem. I understand that the owners of the publishing company are no longer living in this country. So we'll have to see how that all works out. But I have 8 books that I need to bring home. So that's another learning curve for me.
Yeah, and for folks listening to this who, have questions or things, the Authors Guild can be a tremendous resource at helping you figure out some of those things. So, you've already touched on this, community and reaching out and not being afraid to say, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Help me figure it out. The universe provides, but community is an essential part of any writer's journey.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
And community isn't always fellow writers, although it can be. It can also be readers who liked the book and have a contact. Everybody knows somebody too. And at times it's almost embarrassing to say that you need help. But I've learned that if you reach out, it is amazing the people that will come to your aid that you least expect to. So again, this is still a learning curve for me. It's still a growth experience for me. And now that this book has come out the way that it has, I don't think I would ever want to do it any other way. But the stars were right.
Yeah.
The stars were right.
And now you have a team in place. Yeah.
I do. I have people. People. It's very exciting. And, they're lovely people. And they can't do enough for me. And I'll never meet at least 2 of them. But they're so supportive. And really, my financial investment has been so tiny that I think it's already been made back immediately. I mean, it's just been a fabulous experience for me. I cannot, if anybody who is listening to this is thinking even remotely about this possibility, it's something to look into. There's a lot of good people out there who have perfected the art of each step that has to happen before the book hits the readers. And they're out there to help you. They're not out there to take all your money.
Yeah. Yeah. Make sure that they aren't, but yes, it's a wonderful.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. Careful of scams, especially these days. But no, I think this is great. And your generosity at sharing your story is great. And congratulations on the new book and this roller coaster journey. But boy, I hope you're going to have a wonderful celebration today. And thank you for being on the podcast, Susan.
Oh, thank you, Julie, for asking me. I had a really great time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for being with us today. Sisters in Crime is about community. We were founded to advocate for women crime writers, and we continue that mission by fighting for equity in the crime writing community. Sisters in Crime is an international, inclusive organization for all who write and love crime fiction, mystery, thrillers, and suspense. Join us at sistersincrime.org and make sure you subscribe to this podcast.